Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Hey. How's it going, Eric?
Bad. Real bad.
Bad? Yeah, I would tend to agree. Yeah.
We're not a political show, but I think this transcends politics, and Minnesota needs your help. Call your leaders. Our federal government is out of control. Call your representatives. Call everyone.
A great website to go to, if you just want to get the gist of it, is just go to standwithminnesota.com. That has a whole bunch of resources for what you can do, even if you're not a Minnesotan. But yeah, any help is appreciated.
Mm-hmm. It's real bad here.
The thing is that it's affecting everybody. So nobody is exaggerating when they say that it's affecting their lives. And it doesn't matter if you know someone who is quote unquote, not supposed to be in this country. It doesn't matter. Like it just is affecting every single person. And so, yeah, it's bad news. Things seem to be getting slightly better, but still we're kind of right in the midst of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a bummer. But this is kind of our escape into technology. So you got to find something to like keep you grounded. Because if I was doom scrolling this past weekend, it's not a good thing to do. So you need some way to like get your mind off stuff. So we can talk about TypeScript and what's happening because there is some cool news this week. But before we get into that, besides everything else that's going on, how are you doing, Eric? What'd you get your mind off of on?
I was playing around with text rendering some more. I'm adding a text layout system based on like Flexbox so that I can do text alignment with the SDF text that I have. So that was fun because it's stacking up rectangles that are of various widths and heights so that the text looks right. And that was fun. And then on top of that, I'm like this Malcolm in the Middle meme. I'm like, but I also need to install a new renderer to do the SDF text in Excalibur. So I was like, well, let me invent a new plugin system. And that's also what I've been doing. I've been in the midst of inventing a new plugin system. So that's been exceptionally fun.
So that's pretty cool. Does that mean that there would be a standard API or interface for creating Excalibur plugins then?
Yeah. And there are existing Excalibur plugins, and it basically works by inheritance.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's kind of the method that plugins are using right now and will probably continue to use.
Mm-hmm.
So cool ideas are flowing forth.
That is cool.
I think there's some more things bouncing around in my head, but I'm excited about it. And I've stolen liberally, if you're curious what it looks like, I've stolen liberally from the Rust library Bevy and how they do their plugin system, because I think it matches well with what I want to accomplish.
Neat. Isn't Bevy does entity component systems as well, right?
They do.
Similar architecture.
Yeah.
That's
similar
cool.
And different.
Yep. Very nice. So, we've been, I pretty much haven't got much work done this last week with all the things going on.
Same.
Yeah. But I did take a step back and took a look at like my Wi-Fi security and stuff like that, because it's been a long time since I first put in Wi-Fi in this house. So I rotated all of my passwords. I audited all the connected devices to it. I think this is always a good idea. And in the router, I actually labeled each of the devices. So I went through one by one. I was like, okay, what is this? And then I put a label on it. So now I know, okay, well, this is the garage opener, or this is the desktop PC, or this is the laptop, etc. So that was helpful because one of the devices did not have a name at all. It was just the MAC address. I'm like, what is this? Well, it turns out it was an iPhone. Apparently it doesn't report like its name, which is probably good for security. But I was like, what is this? And then the other thing I'm doing is looking into creating VLANs, which I know is like an advanced technique. And my router actually doesn't support VLANs properly. So I had to go get a network switch. But what that lets you do is create network isolation. So if you don't want your IoT devices to be like talking to your desktop computer or like being able to access your desktop computer or other sensitive devices on the network, you want to use a VLAN, but you need special hardware that lets you do that. So I got a switch that lets me do that.
Mm-hmm.
That way I can put all the IoT stuff that could potentially have vulnerabilities and stuff, I can put it on its own isolated network.
Especially smart TVs, because it's been pretty well documented that smart TVs are scanning your network to further collect intelligence on what you are about at your home, including what you watch.
Yep.
So it's very good to box those things in.
I've got a pretty dumb TV, so it's not connected to Wi-Fi at all. But what I did find out is that the light switches that I was using that I bought years ago are totally out of support. And they have not gotten any firmware updates. So those went into the garbage because I do not trust that. But I audited the rest of my smart devices. They all seem up to date. I made sure that they were all patched and everything, and they're still getting updates. So those ones I kept. But yeah, I think it's a good idea just to audit your network every once in a while. Go and see what's on it. Otherwise, yeah, I think I did work on the course a little bit. So I updated the demos. I forward ported the Aspire stuff to the advanced course. So now I got it running on Aspire, and I have the identity server authentication gateway set up with Aspire, and that was all working. So I'm just working on the first module of the course and trying to get through that. So that's what I'll be working on this week.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, let's get on to some of the TypeScript news for the week of January 19th. So a week after my birthday, there's a whole bunch of stuff that was happening last week.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with some of the TypeScript news?
Yeah, there was some interesting TypeScript news. There's, as far as I can tell, a PR from a community member, Jonathan Neal, who is adding import attributes in ambient module declarations. And remember, import attributes are that import thing with type JSON or with type binary, that kind of thing. It's like built into the ECMAScript spec, but we don't have a way of typing that like precisely yet.
Right.
So that's what this PR is for. And it looks like maybe it'll be a thing. It looks pretty cool. I'm excited for this because this will be super nice when you're trying to do like, okay, I'm getting this as text, for example. Like, for example, if you're importing a shader, you want to import with text so that you'll be like, okay, now I have a type for this thing, or, what have you.
Yeah, I mean, if you've dealt with Webpack before, you might be familiar with like the raw loader or like CSS loader or things like that, where you would have to put specific syntax in your import string. We'd be like ! raw loader, right? The thing with that is that it's not very portable, right? So with import attributes being part of the spec, now loaders and bundlers can just handle those types of special loaders with an import with attribute. And now TypeScript is going to add support for typing that. So I think that'll be really nice.
Yeah. If you want to get that kind of like feature today, a lot of the technique that I use is I make a files.d.ts. And in that very specific case, like I do declare module, quote, wildcard.css, end quote. And then I say export default string so that like, it's decoupled from the bundler. So like it's not reality for sure, but it at least gives you some types.
Yes. Yep. That was one of the incompatibilities we ran into when switching to Rspack for Excalibur when I implemented it. So I had to work around it, and we were able to work around it. Import attributes should be coming pretty soon to all of our bundlers. Soonie. So that's cool.
Very nice. Next up, Deno 2.6.6 was released. Checking out the release notes here, they have added a few like quality of life things, including a progress bar for the TSGo download. So they're pulling TSGo in, which is super slick. They added a accepted bare host and bare port for the inspect flag. So you can just type that in if you're going to add I believe that's the debugger, if I'm not mistaken, for the -- inspect. But I could be wrong about that. They added a WS events endpoint for the inspector server, so you can look at WebSockets. That's pretty cool. They added globstar, fail glob, null glob, and pipe fail support. And that's as far as I know, that's all like Node API compatibility. And like a ton of bug fixes. So a whole bunch of bug fixes. And they added OpenTelemetry into the cron implementation in Deno, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
Deno also hinted that the next release will have, I don't think it's included in this release, but the next release will have the temporal API unflagged and ready for general use because they're pulling in the latest V8.
Cool. That's very nice. So temporal's coming soon to
Yes.
Deno. So probably one of the headliner news items this week is that Rolldown 1.0 release candidate is available, which means that the API is stable.
That's right.
And needs to be tested. So they need your help.
Yeah, I'm very open to actually, I should have talked about this offline, but we should actually just merge Rolldown Vite into Excalibur so that we can test it, because we're not going to be cutting another version for a little while, so we can kind of feel out any rough edges. But some of the things that they're touting are very cool, like 10 to 30 times faster than rollup while staying compatible, multiple chunking algorithm improvements. And in fact, they have posted a roadmap that you can go and read to see the features and changes that are going to happen in Rolldown after V1 here.
Yeah, I do have a draft PR where I was trying to do Rolldown, but that was the preview release, so I could probably update it to the RC and see if it works. I was trying to use TSGo with it, so I think that would be pretty cool if we could integrate that.
Yeah, this is super cool stuff. I'm really excited. I'm like unreasonably excited about this. I'm probably cart before the horsing this a little bit because I want it so bad.
So people might be wondering, what is the difference between using Rolldown and then using Vite? So you can think of Vite as like the superset, right? So Vite is for like application development, like you want to run a dev server, but then when it comes to bundling, it uses Rollup, but Vite 8, the beta, can use Rolldown. So all the tooling is kind of being unified into Rolldown. So the things that used to use Rollup are going to be switching over to Rolldown.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, but Vite uses two different bundlers depending on if you're in dev or production mode. It uses rollup in production mode, like we just talked about. But in dev mode, it uses ESBuild. And the reason it does that is because it's really, really fast. But it's not as good of a bundler as rollup is. It's not as feature complete, and it doesn't have the same level of community plugins. So like there's just kind of a network effect with rollup. Kind of incentivized to, okay, why don't we just make ESBuild better? Well, rollup has a lot of market share. So look, why don't we make Rollup faster and make Rolldown?
Yes. So eventually in Vite 8, the API should all be unified between dev and prod so that when you do a dev build, it acts the same way as a production build.
Yes. Which has been a source of a lot of pain, especially for me.
Yep. Cool. Otherwise, what else do they have in here? I mean, they've got performance stuff. They've got lots of performance optimizations. They've stabilized a bunch of the APIs. They've got tsconfig auto discovery enabled by default, which is pretty cool. They've got better error messages. They've added more to the documentation. And so their roadmap for 1.0, they say, is that they're going to have this release candidate period where they're going to gather community feedback, fix critical bugs, and ensure API stability. And we want to keep the breaking changes to 0. And then they're going to move to Vite 8, which will ship with Rolldown as the default bundler, replacing both ESBuild and Rollup in the build pipeline, which is what we were just explaining. And then finally, you'll get Rolldown 1.0, which is the stable release, once the RC is proven reliable in production use cases. So yeah, you should go check it out and try to give it a try.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I'm going to give it a try. And no joke, it is fast. It is extremely fast. And it makes my life a lot easier.
Nice.
Because like for a long time, we were waiting for Webpack builds for a good solid minute. And that really kills your productivity, especially like when you're iterating on tests as well. That really yucks your yum.
Yep. All right. Well, there's some cool stuff happening in the TC39 space, which is a set of new proposals, advancements, and even one that got trashed, it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. There's probably a good reason I am a little sad about it. But yeah, we should talk about it. Upsert got moved to stage 4, and this is the map.prototype getter insert, otherwise maybe known as Upsert. 4 means it's done. We're there.
Yeah, so it's going to ship.
It's going to ship. It's happened.
Cool.
Next up is International Era Month Code got promoted to stage 3, which is pretty cool. We love internationalization APIs that are built into the browser because it makes your life a lot easier and the amount of code you have to ship a lot less.
Yeah.
Import sync has been promoted to stage 2.
So That would be like, instead of a dynamic import that you have to await, this would be a synchronous import.
Yes, let me look at the, this is championed by Guy Benford, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's instead of like import defer, this is import sync. Like don't just synchronous import.
Yeah, that's cool.
Next, we have composable accessors via built-in decorators, and that's a mouthful, but this is being championed by Leah Veru. And the motivation here is there are large classes of accessor use cases with strong commonalities, and they deserve better DX and tooling. Most of these accessors are additive or composable rather than like the mental model of replacing a property with arbitrary code that regular accessors, as they are right now, are designed around. Composable accessors, on the other hand, are value-backed. As a baseline, they proxy another property stored in an internal slot by default, or they are provided by another property. And any validation logic, transformation, side effects are layered over that baseline. The underlying value-based plumbing is provided by auto accessors or aliased accessors. Then additional functionality is layered over that baseline through built-in decorators, which is the subject of this proposal, which is pretty slick. It's very cool. And there's some examples here like lazy evaluation. So you can do deferred expensive computation until a property is accessed and then cache it.
Yeah.
Data validation, reject certain writes, either loudly or silently. Data normalization, or run code that runs before or after writes. So that's like side effects. So you might do like aspect-oriented type stuff.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty neat. So hopefully that gets farther.
Yeah, this is cool stuff. This is cool stuff. One of the maybe notable things in the proposal right now is there is a new decorators global object that allows you to like inspect the available global decorators to you. So like if there's one, for example, that is built in, for example, things that people do all the time is like memoizing stuff, validating stuff, normalizing stuff. Maybe we just have all of these things just built into the browser, which can be done really fast. And then you can inspect whether or not the browser has an implementation of these already with the decorators global. Cool stuff.
Yeah.
One that I am kind of interested in is there's the new error option limit property, and this moved to stage 1, but it allows you to limit the amount of stack frames to capture during an error.
Wow.
Currently, there's no limit or agreed upon limit.
So is that like you have a really long stack trace? But
Yeah.
this lets you sort of cut it off at a certain point.
Yeah, and there's also a performance problem with capturing stack frames, especially if you're in a hot loop and you throw an error. Capturing that stack frame could be expensive, especially if it's in a hot loop and you're capturing like 10 million miles of a stack frame. So this allows you to be like, okay, I only want this much. And in particular, sometimes that's all you really need because your application code is sitting on top of a framework. And if you throw an exception, you don't need any of that framework goo in there. That's not helpful. If you've ever seen an Angular exception on like change detection, you're like, well, okay, well, that's 400 miles of not useful. There's that. And the last one I want to talk about is international.unit format gets the boot.
Oh, bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. But don't be sad because it's being replaced with a new proposal, which I think, Carmen, you have the link for.
Yes, it's a international.number format. So it's a unified API. So it's actually it's basically a superset of that unit format, which was the proposal. And they decided, you know what? What if we just go one step further and we create a unified API for international number formatting? So that is just part of that now. So you can add a measure for unit formatting as part of this number format proposal. So we say goodbye to the more narrow use case and we go wide, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. Next, we have Firefox 147, which just dropped. On the release notes, they have a few things that are interesting. One is when you select pseudo elements in the HTML pane, you can edit the selector of the corresponding rule in the CSS pane, which is wild that you couldn't do that before. I think that's been in Chrome DevTools for like 400 million years. There's been a few changes to SVGs, such as when you use an SVG as an image source, such as like a background image, it now supports media fragments. So you can do like SVG, SMIL animations, temporal dimensions. You can do cool stuff with SVGs when they're included as an image element, which typically you can't do normally. So that's kind of neat. Although you might want to embed that SVG as an object in your page anyway if you have interactive SVGs. Mixed browser support on that one. I can only assume. APIs, document active view transition is now properly supported. So that's always good. The WebGPU API is now enabled for all Mac OS devices with Apple Silicon. That's huge. So if you were looking to do like any kind of like GPU compute with JavaScript on your Apple Silicon computer, huzzah, now you have it. This is also huge news. Brotli compression is now supported for compression stream and decompression stream. That's awesome. If you're not familiar, Brotli is a very good compression algorithm, so you can save some bits over the wire. This is huge. Service workers can now be ES modules rather than the weird pre-ES module syntax for workers, which is super cool.
That's cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
To load a service worker module, specify type module when calling service worker container.register. That is cool.
Nice.
I love that. But yeah, cool stuff.
We've got some meta framework news. Nuxt 4.3 is out, so it's a minor release. But, here's one thing that's cool. The inline styles feature now works with Webpack and Rspack builders, not just Vite. This enables critical CSS inlining for better core web vitals regardless of your bundler choice. If you've never heard of critical CSS inlining, the Explain Like I'm 5 version is the top of fold for your website. If you could just load that CSS only, that is what we would call critical CSS. And if you can inline those styles, the browser does not need to do any kind of network request to go get the style sheet for that. So critical CSS inlining is a smart way to do that. It does require you to like architect your CSS and page in such a way that you can do that, but it's a pretty cool performance trick.
Yeah. And you can go a little wild with it too. You don't want to like throw all of it as inline,
right? Because
then your page will take forever to download, and you'll just have just a white background while your page is being downloaded.
Exactly. Yep. So I've never used the inline styles feature specifically with Nuxt, but basically that's what critical CSS inlining is. So I'm not sure how they do it, but that's pretty cool. So you can go Google that or check that out if you want to look at that.
I've used that for like the shimmering skeleton thing before. Like if you have a spa, for example, and you don't have anything to render until data loads, you can just throw that on there.
All right. We do have a PSA for Svelte. So there were 5 CVEs that affect the Svelte ecosystem. And so we'll link to the blog post, but you basically want to update your Svelte.js package, your SvelteKit.js package, and if you're using the Svelte.js adapter node package, update that as well. And then if you're specifically using the dvalue package, which I guess is maintained by them, you also want to update that.
Yeah. And maybe the TLDR is 4 of these are denial of service, which is not great. And one of them is a cross-site scripting. Actually, there's 2 that are possible SSRF and another one that is XSS via hydratable. So definitely take a look at that. The attack is extremely clever, which is if an attacker is able to cause a server process to die, SSRF allows internal resources to be reached without authentication from SvelteKit server runtime, and it is possible to get cache poisoned by forcing a potential CDN to cache XSS returned by the attacker's new server, and then the later being distributed out to other people because it's being cached by the CDN, which is wild stuff.
I mean, it's a cache poisoning attack, right? So if you can get your infected code into the cache, the CDN will then serve your infected code to everybody else that it needs to serve. So that's a dangerous one.
And then the one that was XSS by hydratable is if you're using hydratable and you're passing unsanitized user control strings as keys, users are vulnerable to cross-site scripting if an attacker can manage to get a controlled key into hydratable. So that's not great.
Nope. So anyway, upgrade now.
Yeah, upgrade now.
All right. We do have a couple library watches. This one was really cool. We talked about a PDF library. I believe it was called Tiny PDF. It was like a very minimalist PDF library. But let's say that you want to build like a DocuSign and you want to do like forms and signing of PDF documents. There hasn't been a lot of good libraries to do that in the Node.js ecosystem. This is a TypeScript only, 100% library from the open source folks over at Documenso. So they're a DocuSign alternative that's open source. This one's called LibPDF, and it supports all the signing stuff that you might want to do. So basically, they wrote this for their own app. And so it's tested in production. They open sourced it. It used to be based on, it's based on the Rust library libpdf, but this is a TypeScript version of it. 100%, no native code, and so you can use it. And I'm not sure what runtimes it's supported on. It says Node Bun in the browser. So there you go.
Hey.
Yep. So and I don't think it has minimal dependencies. So it doesn't have zero dependencies, but it does have minimal dependencies. And let's see, just reading from the homepage here, incremental updates, digital signatures, encryption, form filling, text extraction, merge and split, attachments, and content drawing. That's a lot of features.
Yeah, if you're sick of paying for your own subscription to Adobe, make your own tool with this.
There you go. Yep. That's right. So you can go to libpdf.documenso.com, and that's DOCUMENSO. Awesome. Yeah, it's the PDF library that TypeScript developers deserve. That's their little tagline.
Such a good tagline.
I like it.
I love the Batman callback.
So the next library watch is if you're a fan of Tori or you're Rustacean, and you do a lot of Rust code, but you also need to deal with TypeScript, there's a library, it's a tool called TS2RS. It's a CLI tool. It can take your TypeScript types and it can transform them into Rust types. And it also supports resolving types from packages. So you can build a complex type that imports types from other packages, and it can resolve those and transform that into Rust interfaces or Rust types. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is pretty slick because otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of time typing this out.
Mm-hmm.
And if your code drifts in any way, then you got to retype this out or maintain these. And if you integrate this into your tool chain, I imagine this would really make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, that's really neat. I have because what I'm thinking of is I have the opposite way. Like I have C# to TS, right? Which is using just a text templating system. And so whenever I change a C# class, it goes and updates my TypeScript files automatically. But that's through an extension inside of Visual Studio. This is like a dedicated CLI tool, and it goes from TypeScript to Rust, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, super slick.
All right. Last but not least, you might have heard us talk about Mastra, which is a TypeScript agent framework. They have been in the 0.x version for a long time now since they launched. These are by the creators of Gatsby, if you used Gatsby in the past. But they have now announced that they've reached Mastra 1.0. So the API is stable. You can do a lot of cool stuff. I have used Mastra to build some cool TypeScript agents, and you can do workflows. You can create agent bots and things like that, and then hook them up to your different tools. Like I hooked them up to the Slack SDK to create a Slack bot. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. And of course, if you're a fan of TypeScript, you're probably using this one. All right. We also have a last PSA. If you're using Lodash, which is super popular, I'm using Lodash, you'll want to upgrade because there was a major security overhaul in the last release. And so there was some prototype pollution attacks that got cleaned up. And I think there was a few other things, but a lot of the Lodash code has been cleaned up to help solve some of these security issues. So I think that the latest version is 4.17.23. So you want to make sure that you upgrade to that version.
Yeah. And part of this blog post is them kind of announcing to the world that this project has re-entered a phase of active, structured stewardship. The goal is not novelty, but trust. And that's I like to see that.
Yeah, so that they've actually established a new formal technical steering committee. So this is a part of the OpenJS Foundation now. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
We have some community highlights to call out.
Yes,
Starting
yes.
out, Daniel Rowe is calling out for your NPM frustrations. And so we'll link to that Blue Sky post where he's calling out to those frustrations. He might be building a tool that's keeping a low profile right now.
Yeah, but he's sourcing input from Blue Sky. Yep. So I think he's working on a new NPM.js admin tool.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've had issues, setting up, for example, issues setting up trusted publishing or OIDC publishing and stuff, you might want to reach out to Daniel.
Next up, we have a Blue Sky message from Peter Kruner, which is actually a really good PSA, but because of the way structural subtyping works, technically WeakMap is technically a super type of map. And you can assign a map to a WeakMap, even though they have radically different semantics when running in JavaScript. So this is just maybe the only time I've been bitten by duck typing and structural typing. Because I was like, that was my big complaint when Go kind of pioneered the space almost more than now more than a decade ago. And I was like, well, how's that going to work? That just doesn't seem like it's going to work. And this is maybe the first concrete example of that really biting you. So I was like, oh, okay, that's a good call out. So yeah, if you're using WeakMap and map together, make sure that you're thinking about what you're doing.
Yeah, the illusion of type safety.
The illusion of type safety. Next up, this person went wild and ported Monkey Ball to a TypeScript game in the browser. This was via a nightshade.technology. Blue Sky user twilightpb.bluesky.social has a GitHub link to Super Monkey Ball on the web. Now you have to run it yourself. There's no link to click to play, but dang, this is cool. I loved Monkey Ball.
That's funny. And it's not a simulation of Monkey Ball, and it's not a emulation of Monkey Ball. It's an actual port of it.
Yeah, absolutely wild. Absolutely wild.
That's funny.
This is a good thread talking about, as a package author targeting LTS node in recent TypeScript versions, do you need to still have a main or module types defined in your package.json? They're asking, I might have a feeling that small export only package definition is enough, but are they missing something? And Kevin Deng replies with some good resources here, suggesting to remove main and module if you have the exports key in your package.json, which makes sense because that would just only serve to confuse, because the exports is that's your basically your import map. You're advertising what you can import. So the main doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then there was also some conversation here about if dropping types would force users to define a module resolution in TypeScript. And now there's the types versions where you can specify in that key what types versions are available in.
Okay.
I believe this is in the package.json. Yeah, I think it's in the package.json. But this is a great thread talking about okay, what is the modern state of the art for publishing latest and greatest packages targeting recent TypeScript versions? What is the state of the art? So this was a great read.
Yeah. So I think you can read the thread for a little bit more context if you're still what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a little easier to see when you can see the package.json and how it's structured. This is mostly for library developers and for people building monorepo packages that need to be used by, a bundler or consumers.
That's right.
All right. Last up, there is a blog post over on the Next.js blog. It's an engineering blog post on how they built TurboPack. So if you're interested in why it's so much faster, how they created incremental compilation and how they engineered it, you can go read that. But they've got a lot of diagrams and a lot of here's how we built it. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Finally, I have a bleed of the week, and I've linked to you feeling attacked by a Blue Sky user. What a hell of a way to dad. And they have a video of the Martians from Sesame Street, otherwise what I call yippers, about two friends who start a podcast. And let me narrate this for you. It's two yippers next to a microphone going, yip, 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 yip. Huh?
Yep.
Yip,
Yep. Yep.
yip, uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Yip, yip, uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
Yip, uh-huh.
So
two friends that started a podcast. There you are.
That's right. So anyway, yeah, I feel attacked. That's us, basically. Cool.
Well,
you got some cool links?
I got some cool links. This one I am going to try, and this was from Josh Goldberg on Blue Sky. But Attila.io made Cruddy, which is a Postman replacement, a Postman-like API tool built in Solid and Solid Start. So if you were I miss the old Postman before they got all weird, ...
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to post, man. I just want to post, man. You can. So check out that tool. It looks really awesome. I think I'm just going to download that because I don't like signing into Postman.
Nice.
Next, I have a bunch of cool YouTube videos. The first one is, hey, have you wanted to make a Game Boy game? Well, you should watch this YouTube channel, System of Levers. He goes through it step by step in very plain language, how to make a Game Boy game. So if that's you, go check that out. I've watched all of them.
Nice.
And on that same hardware vein, I stumbled across a wonderful video about making a homebrew GPU for a homebrew CPU. And the insight for me there was I've never understood how multiplication is implemented in circuitry. And that was cool because I've always, I know, you learn how to make an adder in circuitry and that kind of makes sense. It's AND gates. But the way that they do multiplication is very cool. So it's adding and shifting, it was mind blowing when I saw it. I was like, oh, that makes a ton of sense.
Nice.
And the last cool link I have is another YouTube video by a friend of mine who talks about transformation matrices. So like if you're doing any kind of like linear algebra or game dev, you might have needed transformation matrices. So he talks all about it. So definitely check that out.
Very nice. Well, for me, I don't have too much. I'll just reiterate that if you want to help out Minnesota, go to standwithminnesota.com. At the very, very top, there is a banner that says, tell your senator no money for ICE. There's also a take action menu item, and you can do contact Congress. So if there's stuff that you can do even if you're not inside of Minnesota. But this also has tons of links for like if you want to donate to different funds. There's all sorts of stuff. Food support, diaper fund, pet and animal support. A lot of people need help. There's a lot of organizations that are doing awesome work on the ground. And then there's lots of like legal organizations too doing tons of work. They're like overwhelmed right now with all the stuff that's going on. So anything you can do would be awesome. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about it. It's kind of I'm not going to say it's a nightmare because it's not. I feel like our family's not as at risk as a lot of others, but man, it's still affecting all of us, especially if you have school-age children. It's very much affecting everybody with school-age children. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, it is affecting you. Well, it is time for the Minnesota long goodbye. Was there anything that stood out to you? I mean, the big thing for me is the Rolldown 1.0 RC. I think that is pretty big news, and it is getting us closer to this like unified tooling ecosystem, which is kind of cool. So like more of these native tools that are now growing large enough to be put into production. Yeah.
I think this is a safe prediction, but I think we're just going to see more and more native acceleration of JavaScript, TypeScript, dev workflow. I think we're just going to see more of that. And I think anything that doesn't enable authors to author in JavaScript or TypeScript is going to see it I don't think they're going to see adoption. I think a big problem with the native tools is the interop with the tools that people are used to using. So like I might not want to write a lint rule in Rust. I want to write it in TypeScript, or I want to write it in JavaScript.
Yep.
I don't want to write it in Rust. And for a lot of folks, or whatever language is backing the native tool, like they're not native developers, and maybe they'd be able to make it work, but they might not have that expertise. So I think that's going to be a hard sell for anyone doing native tooling. They're going to need to have some form of interop.
Yes, sir. I think it's cool to see some of these like other use cases just being implemented purely in TypeScript. Like the libPDF stuff is really cool because PDFs are notoriously really difficult to deal with. So a lot of those tools that if you want to programmatically mess with PDFs, you usually have to pay for because they are so complicated. So it is pretty generous of Documenso to release libPDF as an open source tool.
What's wild is governments use PDF as the document of data storage and exchange, and is probably the worst possible document for that.
Yeah. Yep. Fun fact, in the course, actually the first course, the one that's already out there, the Model Context and Protocol in Practice, I show you how to set up a Azure AI search indexer to index PDF documents so it can extract the text from it, and then you can do a search, a vector DB search to like go and figure out, I want to learn about vacation, sick leave, or I want to know about holidays or whatever. It'll go pull out the relevant excerpt for you. But yeah, PDFs are like the unstructured data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's no sense of flow in a PDF either. Like, I don't know if you've seen like OCR things where they just jump across a column. Like if you have multi-column on a page, like it doesn't know that that's not the flow that you're intended to read that document.
Right.
So that's stuff like that in PDFs that are extremely challenging.
It's kind of like, it's just like a collection of bounding boxes, basically, right? And on different layers and things like that. It's not like a flow layout or anything.
Yeah. It's not how you, like a sane person would decide to make a text format.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, that about it?
Now that's about it. See you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at comronicus.com, and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.